Alright guys, this is the Kentucky Derby Contenders video for 2019. This year I decided to make the video a lot shorter than years prior, so I just want to get right into it. Starting with the favorite, Omaha Beach. He's right here. I circled him so you can see where he's running. I'm just going to talk about some reasons why he's the favorite and why he should win. He's a Grade 1 winner. He won the Arkansas Derby. He won this race. And he's also beat two other Grade 1 winners, including Improbable, which he beat here, and he beat the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and multiple Grade 1 winner, Game Winner. He also has the speed to get himself into the race, and so right here he's on the lead. And this is how recent Kentucky Derby winners. This is how they've been winning. They've been forwardly placed. Horses like Justified last year, Always Dreaming a couple of years ago, Nyquist, American Pharoah, California Chrome. All of these horses were sitting either first, second, or third. No, I shouldn't say first. Like second or third in the Kentucky Derby over the last 5 years. So he's following this trend of horses that are speed horses that are good, that make their move early. He also he's a gutsy horse. Right here, he takes off from the rest of the field. Improbable chases him. Improbable here is running his eyeballs out and just can't get to him. Omaha Beach will just not let him pass. This is his gallop out. He also had a pretty good gallop out. I'm also showing his previous race, the Rebel Stakes, one of two Rebel Stakes races this year. This is the race in which he beat Game Winner, the highly regarded Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner. Again, he does something that he did before. He goes to the lead, makes his move early, and then just does not let anybody catch him, which is different from when he was a turf horse, which he had some excuses, but for some reason he couldn't win until later. So he's the favorite. Mike Smith, Richard Mandela is the trainer. Pretty good trainer. The other horse I want to talk about is Maximum Security. He's taking off here. This is the Florida Derby. He's here. I circled him here so you know where he is. He's also a Grade 1 winner, and not just any Grade 1 too. He won the Florida Derby, which has produced a lot of recent Kentucky Derby winners, like Always Dreaming, like Nyquist, like Orb a few years back. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the most productive Kentucky Derby prep in history. So I think he's a good horse. He's undefeated, and he's not just undefeated. He's burying his competition. He's winning. Before this race, he was beating a lower quality field of horses, but he was destroying them and winning his races geared down. The jockey was putting on the brakes before he even hit the wire. So I think he's a good horse. A lot of people are going to dismiss his effort here because it was sort of a slow pace. But when it's time to run, he just blasts out of there like a rocket. He takes off. He came home here pretty fast. So he's just never been challenged, and you have to be cautious with horses like this that nobody's ever been close to him. So for me, this is the other main contender. It's either Omaha Beach or Maximum Security for me. And what I wanted to show in this race is that some people are going to say that he needs the lead and there's no way he's going to get a slow pace. Well, he doesn't need the lead in this race. He settled in third and was just he's rateable. He's just naturally fast, so that's why he goes to the lead. But he doesn't need it. Another thing that I like in case it rains, he loved the off track here, and so did Omaha Beach, and it's been raining a lot in the Kentucky Derby recently. So those are the two main contenders. I'm gonna move on to the what I feel are like the second tier of horses. Beginning with Game Winner. Here is Game Winner winning the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year at Churchill Downs. So this horse, he could easily win. He should be in my top three main contenders. He just hasn't been able to get it done this year. He hasn't won a race this year, but he's been really close. But he's a multiple Grade 1 winner. He's won 3 times at the Grade 1 level, which is the highest level. He won this race at Churchill Downs, where the Kentucky Derby is. So that's good because we know he can win there. We know he likes the track. He's been super wide in a lot of his races, and maybe that's why he hasn't won either of his 2 races, but he's covered more ground, meaning that he's run further than the actual winners. He got beat by Roadster, and he traveled a longer distance than Roadster, and before that he got beat by Omaha Beach, and again he went further than Omaha Beach. So he's a good horse. The Kentucky Derby will be his third race off the layoff. Usually that's a pretty good angle. Horses tend to run their biggest race the third time off a layoff. Baffert is the trainer. He's just recently won 2 Kentucky Derbies and 2 Triple Crowns with Justify and American Pharaoh. Rosario's a good jockey. He's won the Kentucky Derby before. And he's just a gutty game horse. All right, moving on to Roadster. This is the Santa Anita Derby, and this is Roadster. I circled him there. Like this horse because he's a Grade 1 winner. He's also very adaptable. He can be close to the pace. He's got a lot of speed. I don't know why it wasn't used here. He ended up settling towards the kind of the back of the pack, but he has speed, he can rate, he can come from the back of the pack, it seems like. So I think that's a positive. And what I like about this horse is that he's what you hear people call a push button horse. So if you watch all of his races, at a certain point, Mike Smith has been riding him. At a certain point, or his jockey says, "Okay, let's go," and he pushes the button. It's almost like it's Nas on a car, where once he pushes the button, he takes off. He's really, really fast. So he's good. I don't necessarily. He's not on my win contenders, but it wouldn't shock me if he won the race. It also wouldn't shock me necessarily if he didn't hit the board either, because I don't necessarily love his pedigree. But also another Baffert. So he's sort of like the second tier, which I consider gonna hit the board. If he wins, it won't shock me either. But he's another contender. Not a huge gallop out here after the Santa Anita Derby. The next horse I'm going to show is Improbable. And I had to go back a few races back to a minor stakes race called the Street Sense Stakes at Churchill Downs. I'm showing this race because the positives are that he's won at Churchill Downs. He likes the track. He is a Grade 1 winner. He won at Los Alamitos in Southern California. He's run two very credible races. His last two races have been pretty good. He just got beat by horses that were maybe superior than him, or in the case of Long Range Toddy, he just ran a huge race that day. Um, Also, the Kentucky Derby is going to be the third start off the layoff for him, and I think it's important to note too that in Southern California there are some issues with the training, and there was a lot of rain and issues of horses getting injured, so that kind of interrupted the track was closed down, and I believe that sort of interrupted their training schedule, so that may have affected their performance, his performance, and maybe other California horses uh, this year. But Baffert feels pretty confident about both Improbable and Game Winner, even though they lost their last two races. So Improbable for me is, he's a pretty good horse. All right, long shots. So here's Tacitus. I know people watching this race are gonna say, "Wait a minute, he's not a long shot," but when I checked today several places to find out what his odds were as of today. Today's actually, let's see, what day is it? It's the 15th of April, and his odds were 12 to 1 in one place and 10 to 1 in another place. So that's where I start considering horses long shots, double digit odds. And I don't know, he's an East Coast horse, and a lot of people in the East Coast tend to love their East Coast horses in the Kentucky Derby. So he might be bet down to like 8 to 1 and not a long shot. But anyway, so this horse is sort of like, I don't think he can win, but it wouldn't shock me if he finished in second, third, or fourth and hit the board and was a usable horse in the race. I usually tend to not like horses that have won the Wood Memorial this race in New York, because it just hasn't produced good quality horses for the Kentucky Derby. Not even these horses that win this race don't even hit the board in the Kentucky Derby. But anyway, in this race, I didn't talk about it, but he went through all kinds of trouble. There was a bunch of bumping around. He kind of bullied his way through, and after all the bumper cars at the beginning of this race, he ended up finding a way to win this race. So, all right, so other long shots. When I think about long shots in the Derby, I want horses that have won at Churchill Downs or tend to hit the board. This is War of Will, and he's dismissed because of this race, his last race, the Louisiana Derby. Something happened. He took a bad step, or he lost his hind legs, and he had to settle in the back of the pack. And after that, towards the end, when he tried to make a move, there was a wall of horses in front of him. So he has an excuse for that performance. He doesn't want to be in the back of the pack. He wants to be forwardly placed, like he is here at Churchill Downs in a previous race. This is War of Will winning at Churchill Downs. This is another race at a stakes race at Fairgrounds, um, and you can see here from other races he looks good. He looks really good, and I think he was a pretty high regarded horse before his bad effort, which I think can is excusable. He's a pretty good horse. He is a stakes winner, a minor stakes winner, and likes Churchill Downs. Tends to hit the board at stakes races. So he's my other long shot. One horse that is not in, but another one that I would consider a long shot is